Hi guys, I recently asked on Facebook what your biggest question is with audio and what you struggle with the most. And I got a lot of responses where people said that they struggle with dealing with clients and with getting paid. So I thought about that one, and there's one thing that immediately stood out in my mind as a solution for both of these issues, and that's contracts. So today we will talk about why you should have a contract as an audio engineer. Okay, so some people seem to be concerned about contracts because they don't want people to think that they're too stuffy and serious. But I'm a fan of contracts, and most of my reasons why have to do with you and the client getting on the same page before the project starts, so that everything is more likely to go smoothly. So here are the top 5 reasons I started using a contract. Okay, so first of all, it shows that you mean business. If they're the type of person to flake out on you, this might make them think twice before working with you. Number 2, contracts allow you to specify what the job entails. So in contract land, this is called your scope of work. When you define your scope, you're basically defining what you're being hired to do and what that entails. When a client tries to push you to do something that wasn't previously considered to be a part of the gig, usually asking you to do this for no extra cost, that's called scope creep. So for example, if I'm doing a mix for someone, the scope is where I specify that this job covers mixing only, with no tracking hours or mastering services. That way, if they decide partway through the mix that they want to track one more vocal harmony, I can say, okay, but that will be extra money. If they try to argue that, saying I promise to help get them to the final mix, saying that this is part of that, I can just point out the scope of work in my contract. Argument over. It makes it simpler and it avoids a messy argument. It helps make sure that you and the client are on the same page going into the project on exactly which services you're providing for the money that they're paying. Number 3, also within your scope of work, you can specify number of revisions. If you've ever had a client that just wanted a million changes made to their mix, then this will help. So some artists will just want to work on their music forever, and they might never feel like a mix is done, no matter how good. So specifying the number of revisions is great for avoiding doing a million revisions for free for a client that just wants to work on their piece forever. So I'll usually specify in the scope how many revisions they get once I send them my version of the completed mix. This is usually 3 to 5 revisions, where a revision consists of the client sending me a list of things to adjust in the mix. So a revision isn't one thing they want changed in the mix, but rather how many times they send me an email or a text with the list of changes they want, and then I sit down and make those changes and send them a new version of the mix. Now, I'll often go over this allotted revision number for a client without charging extra, but if I start to feel like the client is abusing the system, is changing their mind back and forth, and maybe isn't going to ever decide it's done, then I can point to the revision clause in the contract. At that point, I can either end the business relationship while still getting paid, hopefully amicably, or start charging them for the excess revisions. You won't need to use this clause with most clients, but when a project starts taking forever, if you charge a flat rate for mixing like I do, then it really cuts into your hourly pay, and there's a point where the project might not be worth it financially for you anymore. So defining how many revisions helps you avoid that kind of a situation, and it helps make sure you'll get paid for your work. Number 4. Contracts also allow you to specify how you should be credited. So usually people seem pretty friendly about crediting those that helped on an album, but all too many times I see guys arguing over how they specifically want to be credited. So for example, if you're an audio engineer that's being hired to mix a track and you know you'll be doing some production work on the track, so maybe you're designing and swapping out sounds or you're rewriting the track harmonies a bit, then you might want to be credited as a producer. But maybe the client hiring you wants to appear to be the sole producer and writer on the piece and expects to only credit you as the audio engineer. If you specify in the contract how you'll want to be credited, then if they disagree, you'll be able to talk to them about it before you start working on the project. Once you've worked on the project, it's going to be much more awkward to duke it out with the client. Plus, having it in writing protects you if they want to change things up on you after you've already come to an agreement later in the project. And finally, number 5, contracts allow you to specify your rates. Your client might just want one service like mixing and that's it, but you might get to the end of the mixing process and they might decide that they want to use your mastering services instead of someone else. Or they might decide they want to use you to track some stuff for another song. If they read the contract, then they already have an idea of what your rates are for additional services, and it will make that conversation with them easier. It makes for a smooth transition into other services. Also, if they were scope creeping a bit, like in our previous example, where the client wanted tracking services on a mixing gig, then having those rates in the contract from the start will make them feel less like they've been tricked into paying more than expected. The contract made sure that they knew from the start what things cost, both the services that they didn't expect to use and those that they did. And that's it for today. So basically the gist of why I believe in contracts is that it makes sure you open up a dialogue about the details of the project with the client to make sure that you're on the same page before you start working. It avoids messy and awkward situations later, and it makes sure that everything is in writing so there's no confusion about what might have been agreed upon at the beginning of the project. So what do you guys think? Have I convinced you? For today's question, I want to know, what do you think about contracts and what are some of your experiences in regards to contracts and studio work? Also, let me know if you'd like me to do a future video where I talk in detail about what's in my contract more specifically. So leave your answers in the comments below, please. Also, if you like this video, please hit the little like button, share the video, or subscribe to my channel. I'll be coming out with new videos every other Wednesday, and thanks for watching. Okay. Number 5. Contract